Why can we not see things even though they are right in front of our face? I am so glad my friend Alec asked this question yesterday. And yes, Alec, I am calling you a friend, even though you live in Australia and even though we have never met, because we have corresponded quite a bit on social media. But I, being a woman of my word, looked into it like I said I would, and I did find out some really interesting information. So I'm so glad that you asked. So here's the question, and I want to start with the situation about not being able to find your way around even with a map. So apparently, as it turns out, it is significantly more common for autistic adults, even without intellectual disability, to get lost more than neurotypical adults. And these are the reasons why. There's 3 reasons. One is spatial awareness. They like to call it topographic agnosia. Everything has kind of a fancy name, but basically what it means is we have a hard time creating a 3D image of our surroundings, okay? Then there's the fact that we tend to use landmarks rather than cardinal directions like north, south, east, and west. So if anything happens to that landmark, like it gets painted or it's moved or demolished, we are lost. Like literally, we're lost. And then sensory overload. If you are trying to figure out a map when cars are whizzing by and cars are honking their horns, it can get really overwhelming and very confusing very fast. As far as the magnet goes, I am the same way. I can sometimes not see things even though they are literally right in front of my face. And my mantra is a place for everything and everything in its place. Still, I can't find it. So this is very interesting. Neurotypical people have something called habituation, which means their brains filter out everything that is repetitive and is non-threatening. Now for autistic adults, we have the opposite. We have reduced habituation. We have trouble filtering things out. Yet we still have a hard time finding things even though when they're right in front of us. It is very highly common, and these are the reasons why. There's 5 reasons. One is sensory processing differences, which means that the brain sees it, but it does not translate it into something recognizable. That's interesting. The second thing is inattention blindness. So we can become so laser focused on a thought that's in our head that we cannot shift our attention. And so in order to conserve energy, our brain shuts off. The third thing is visual overload, also known as visual background noise. Love that one. It means that since we don't filter unimportant things out, in order to prevent a meltdown from all of the clutter, our brain shuts down. Again, thanks brain. The fourth thing is aphantasia. Now I find this very interesting. Aphantasia means we have a trouble creating mental images. And I had to look this one up because I'm the opposite. I can create very vivid visual images, but it's more common for autistic people not to be able to. As a matter of fact, 20% versus 1 to 4% of neurotypical people they just can't do it. And so if we can't create that mental picture, it makes it hard for us to find what we're looking for. I can create those mental images, but they're not always accurate, which leads me into number 5, bottom-up thinking. So bottom-up thinking we hear a lot when we're talking about autism, and what it means is we look at the little details and put them together to figure out the situation. And I heard a great example of that the other day. We see the sidewalk is wet. We see drops dripping from the trees and we think, oh, it must have rained. That's how our brains, it's kind of simple, but it makes sense. Well, if something is not in its exact place, if it's a different color, it can be just an inch away or a different color and totally don't see it. Now I have slowed myself down enough to think, okay, look to the left, look to the right, or up and down, look for a different color, and I find it and I think, I can't believe that. It was right in front of my face. So anyway, I found this to be very interesting. And so Alec, thanks again for asking that question, and I hope it helps. And I will see you all